Give yourself a critique.
Hey everyone. Welcome to Friday Training on IG Live. We'll be taking some Q&A, so make sure you put in your questions live for me, and we're ready to go. Welcome everybody for the simulcast, the IG Live, Clubhouse, and of course our webinar, simulcast. Welcome. Today's training is on vulnerability, and understanding vulnerability is very important, because vulnerable is being invulnerable. And I know that's counterintuitive, but if we work on being vulnerable, we actually can achieve invulnerability. Let me explain why. Take for example, I like the baby on the sidewalk example. If there was a baby lying on the sidewalk, that is a completely vulnerable being in a vulnerable situation. Nobody would do anything except for help it. There's even animals have been proven they would walk by and try to help, and that's because of its pure energy of defenselessness. The minute we get defensive, it's an attacking energy. We welcome attacks. We attract attacks when we put up defenses. When we are completely vulnerable, it is truly the essence of invulnerability. And so to start, I think it's important to understand what vulnerability means. And what it really means is that you feel things easily, that you have alignment with your energy, that your emotions are exposed easily. The truth is exposed easily. Your highest frequency is the truth. Your vibration is elevated. Your awareness is elevated. You actually are someone, when you're vulnerable, that sees the best in people. So obviously, with the lens of gratitude, to see light, love, and lessons in everyone is part of being vulnerable, of feeling easy, of being connected to, without any type of interference, to that true you that makes you so special. You're capable of loving little things and loving people over little things, and finding those superpowers in all relationships. A smile can change the way, an intensity of a stare. You get attached very easily to things when you're vulnerable, because you give yourself the freedom to feel, F-E-E-L. You give yourself freedom to feel, and it gives you a practice of connecting to that great source that can help you with your awareness, and most importantly, with your happiness. Now, how can we get people to feel comfortable being vulnerable? Because, we have taught to defend ourselves. We don't see the paradox of defense and attack that exists, and we create resistance, voids, and shortages by thinking if we're vulnerable, people will take advantage of us, but it's actually the opposite to be true. And so there's three things that I practice in order to get more comfortable in being vulnerable. One is the practice of self-acceptance. Even though you have your faults, self-acceptance helps you feel more comfortable with being vulnerable to others. When we learn to love ourselves, when we learn to forgive ourselves, we get comfortable with ourselves and comfortable with the snapshots that people have of us. Why is it so difficult in family reunions and holidays? Is because we're growing, expanding, we're learning, we're different people, and we may be put back into a closed situation with someone that has a snapshot from when we were 10 years old, 16 years old, 26 years old, and the judgments and conditions are elevated, and it creates a resistance, it creates frustration, ego-based consciousnesses that put us back into those snapshots and make us have feelings of uncomfortability or shame, blame, and justification of those snapshots from the past, when those were just circumstances of learning. So self-awareness and acceptance and allowance of that illumination of those past experiences will help you lower your defenses, which will lower the attacks and the energy of those attacks. One of the other things is that being and feeling comfortable, vulnerable, it prevents you from taking risks. when you are so afraid of what other people will think and seeking the acceptance of others and worried about being invulnerable, vulnerability allows you to take more risks, allows you to accept the process of learning and failing forward and all those great things that everybody teaches you. Vulnerability is key to feel it's okay to feel. It's okay to fail and feel. And it gives you, the third thing, permission to be imperfect. Wouldn't that be nice? To be able to be imperfect, not by what other people feel, but by what you feel about yourself. To rejoice in the imperfections that make us ourselves. To enjoy the imperfections that allow us to transmit our frequency, to attract the people from our lives without chaos or control, without drama, without resistance, without void shortages and obstacles. One of the key components of seeing and looking upon people not as gatekeepers keeping us from what we want, but more as sponsors and power sponsors is vulnerability. So if vulnerability is so powerful and it's so easy to practice, why are so many people afraid of being vulnerable? Vulnerability makes your mental processing more prone to negativity because you're more prone to making bad decisions and having bad thoughts. Simply, people are afraid of being vulnerable because people can attack them at any time and any day without much effort. But it is counterintuitive because what it's doing is taking the energy out of those attacks. And there's multiple experiences where people illuminate and are completely vulnerable, and it would be very similar to, if you see a baby lying on a sidewalk attacking that baby. Who would do such a thing? Nobody. And you need to be that baby on the sidewalk. You need to be comfortable in your invulnerability by being completely vulnerable and exposing who you are, and realize that it is not a negative thing if somebody does attack you when you're vulnerable, because it's indicating that you better get far away from that person in the great chain of feeding, that those people are kryptonite. You got to get away from that. They are going to suck you and bleed you dry. If somebody's in the mindset of attacking somebody that's being vulnerable, exposing their true feelings and true selves, you don't want to be around it. So you're actually receiving a great blessing if someone does attack you when you're being vulnerable. And trust me, if they're attacking you when you're vulnerable, imagine what they're doing when you're putting up a defense. Imagine what those people are doing around you, how they're bleeding you, and what you're doing. I will say, I didn't give those reminders to start it, just see, please, everyone, we're going to do Q&A after this, so put your questions in. Would love to see those in there. And as always, if you have any questions or you want the exercises of invulnerability from this, just email me, david@dmeltzer.com. All right, moving forward. So what's the importance of being vulnerable? It's important to be vulnerable because doing so allows us to share the things which have hurt us. It exposes where we feel that insecurity and feel compassion in that act of sharing where we have been exposed and where we have been hurt. And therefore, that same vulnerability allows us to share that experience and think about the good points about being vulnerable and see the strength in using the attribute of vulnerability in order to effectuate connecting and emotionally connecting to others. And the key is right there. If we take control of our fears, we can use our vulnerabilities not to harm ourselves and others, but to help others come out of their shell and encourage you to open and let go of your feelings to others. I had a client fly in and, Harvard grad, flew in on his private jet and big meeting at the Ritz-Carlton. And I asked him, what I love to ask people when I first start out is, tell me what you're doing today, what you like about it, what don't you like about it. And all I got was a long litany of invulnerability, of huge successes, of growing up and, success after success, school after school, business deal, public company, exit, success after success. And then this individual asked me, so tell me about yourself. And I basically went through that journey of mine of vulnerability, of understanding the dummy tax that I paid and the failures or lessons that I've learned and losing everything and the stupid things that I did and how this occurred and, you know, my true feelings about those things within the journey that I had. And it was so funny because the energy